All right. All right. This is a little different. Welcome to Life Change Lounge. What I'm looking at here is a delayed video on Facebook. So we're going to have a real conversation, but the video that I'm looking at is delayed. So this is going to be different. Holly, you are my first Life Change Lounge guest that is on Zoom for our Facebook Life Change Lounge. So this is cool. I'm Salo Ortiz. Welcome everybody to Life Change Lounge. Life Change Lounge is a place where we highlight real lives and the real life changes and the life change moments that real people go through. And so I'm just going to facilitate this conversation in the new year. It's 2022. This is volume 2 because we started this in 2021. And I've got an amazing guest with me. Her story is powerful and her jokes are ridiculous because it's usually about me. But I want us to be able to just have a real conversation about her story. Please send in questions on the chat. We've got somebody monitoring that and we'll be able to answer those as we go. Holly, what we're going to do is we'll answer some questions here and there as we're going through the conversation, but then really save some time towards the end for, you know, some kind of ad-lib questions and anything else that I may come up from this crazy head of mine. With me tonight is Holly Helfant. Holly and I go back like peanut butter and jelly. Well, maybe not, but we go back. We go back to the days of probation for juvenile detention. We go back to working City of Virginia Beach together, and Holly's got an amazing story. Holly has traveled from the States to Australia and back, and came back. And I think she came back for this, but I think you're right? Like, you know, you came back to join this squad, so.
I'll just say yes.
There you go, that's a really good answer. So what we're gonna do, Holly, I just want you to tell the viewers, both live now and in the future, because we're gonna be posting this on YouTube, posting this all over our socials at Life Change Lounge, or excuse me, Life Change Institute. And so I just want you to say hi and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's such a kind of an honor, but a crazy thing to be approached by someone to talk about something that, you know, is so personal, but not realizing how impactful it is. So my story starts with sort of, you know, a diagnosis that changed my life and made me take back control of my life as well. So so I'm excited to sort of talk about it today.
I love it. I love it. So Holly has admitted to me, and I'm going to use all these things against her, that she has never done a podcast type or Zoom style sort of interview like this. So I get to pick on her. I wished I looked that good nervous because she's sweating bullets. And Holly, I got to be real with our folks. You're sick too. You're not feeling well. You were going to be here with us. We chatted this morning and you were like, yo, I feel horrible. So how are you feeling now? You okay?
I'm feeling okay. Look, you know, it's the days of COVID. You never really know sort of what's going on. So it's better to be safe than sorry. But yeah, I'm feeling okay. I just caked the makeup on.
Yeah, so did I, right? You can't tell. Yeah. So look, Holly, you've not done this before. Life Change Lounge goes like this. It's an unscripted conversation. I know that we've chatted a lot leading up to this, and I still don't know what I'm going to really talk about. But there's 2 scripted questions that we'll ask, one at the top and one at the end. And so we'll start with, you know, what the life change moment was, and we'll end with how you define life change. And so let's get into that. I know that we have a lot of life change moments in our lives. People don't just have one. You pick one that you want to kind of jump from, and we'll go from there. But what was the life change moment that led to us wanting to do this, or you willing to do this?
So for me, it sort of goes way back. And I know that you and I talked about this like a decade ago. I, you know, through my family and, you know, through my family history and suggestions from them, had gone to the doctor and sought advice and diagnosis of BRCA1 or BRCA gene, rather. So my family has a high history of cancer, especially with breast cancer and ovarian. And through my very brave aunt who survived breast cancer, she found out that she was a carrier of the BRCA or BRCA gene mutation, which then prompted our family to also get further tests on whether they were also positive. And unfortunately, I am one of the family members who does have a carrier of the BRCA1 gene mutation, which puts me at a very high risk of breast cancer as well as ovarian cancer.
Is that a maternal trait, or is that something like it's hit or miss? Like, how is that? Like, could you have prevented that, finding that?
No, so it's not, I mean, now it's technically preventable through, if you chose to do IVF. There's so much science that goes into it that you could prevent your future children from having it. It's not a disease. It's not, something that you can catch from someone. It's unfortunately, the way that genetics work, it's passed down through either the mother or the father. And so it can be either one or both. And then the children potentially could also carry the gene mutation.
Wow. So you found out you had this gene, BRCA. Am I saying that right? BRCA?
That's right.
Found out you had this BRCA gene. And how does that go from that to mastectomies? Like, that's and understand. And here, let me tell my viewers this, because I'm a true guy. I mean, I grew up with 3 sisters. I got a mom. Like, I got women in my life, and yet I think like a guy, and it's hard for me to link. And so part of me, if it's the goal is never to be disrespectful in this journey.
Oh, of course.
I'm trying to understand.
So for me, you go in and you get tested. That's the first step. You can speak to your, GP or your doctor, whoever it is, and tell them, I have familial history or I have a concern. I'd like to get tested, and hopefully, you would have access to that. For me, I was, thankfully. And so I went in, had the test done, came back for my results, which they give to you in person either way. And so
Did they give you,
I
like,
went
the
in.
deathly call? Like, hey, you need to
No, they just set up the next appointment automatically. So it's not that, oh, you need to come in and then something's wrong.
Right.
So I went in. I actually didn't tell my family. I didn't tell anyone. I just didn't think it was that big of a deal. And for sure, I would not have tested positive from it. And so I went in totally blasé, and she said, look, I'm really sorry, but you are positive for the gene mutation. And I think I just blacked out. Everything sort of, went in full speed. Yeah. And slowed way down. So the first steps for me and for a lot of other people is to then go in to see the specialist. So you'll go see the breast specialist, you'll see the gynecologist who specializes in cancer. You'll go and get lots of testing done and then come up with, a personal plan for yourself, because not everyone's journey is the same. And I want to be, really frank about that my journey is very different from other people's journeys.
Right. So that's a punch, not even a punch in the gut, because there's a million like thoughts that are racing through your head, right? It's not like you didn't know this was in your family, right? So a lot of families have cancer running through the families. They have these sort of ideas. So it's not like it was a huge surprise, but it's a surprise. It's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like I thought that I was invincible or that nothing would happen. I just didn't really understand the gravity of what it meant to be BRCA1 positive. And so at that time, everything was crumbling for me, but it's absolutely not a death sentence. And
let me ask this, Holly, let me ask this, because this is a thought. Is the life change moment the mastectomies, the double mastectomy at 35, or is the life change moment finding out you were BRCA1 positive? Like, which one is, because we've talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for me, it's, reflecting on which one it was. So, for knowledge, I've had a double mastectomy for preventative purposes. I chose to, take my life into my own hands. But even though that's such a life-changing, huge, drastic surgery, for me, the life-changing moment was 100% when I found out that I was BRCA1 positive. Wow. And the reason I say that is because statistically, to give people a little bit of background, with breast cancer, 13% of women will develop breast cancer in their lifetime. But with BRCA1 carrier, the gene carriers, 55 to 72% will develop breast cancer in their lifetime.
Gotcha.
And
so not all breast cancer is BRCA1 breast cancer.
So from my understanding, and I need to do a little bit more research, this is what my oncologist told me. For breast cancer in general, there's many types of breast cancer that you can get. And to be honest, there's so many names, I actually don't even know the names. But for us, for, BRCA1 and also BRCA2 carrier, you tend to get the more unfavorable breast cancer type. And oftentimes it's more than one types of breast cancer that you'll find, and it's aggressive. So when they're having you come in and make really huge life decisions, that's the reason why.
So like, I'm laughing, Holly, because you said like the unfavorable cancer, like, because there's a favorable cancer here,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's just hard for us. Look, I didn't grow up with cancer in my family. I didn't grow up with these sort of conversations. Here's the thing. I feel, and so we can push back and forth, right? It's almost like a double life change moments, because for some, it's the BRCA1 diagnosis and the understanding of the quote unquote unfavorable of that, and the way your life shifted with that diagnosis. But for a lot of people watching this, Holly, it's the public sort of image that is going through a process like that, and a restructuring process, a reconstruction process, and all of these things, the way it changes the mindset of, you're 35 years old, girl. You're young. You are young.
Absolutely. And think about it, I was 24 at the time when I found out. And so at 24 years old, I never imagined that I would be having every 6 months a mammogram, MRI, ultrasound. Then they would find lumps and have to do biopsies. And having that, at any age is terrifying. It's not a fun process. I don't know anyone that loves to go get a mammogram. I think that anyone who's ever had them can commiserate with me. It is not fun.
Fair. Very fair. And listen, again, here's the bias that is gender and those things, because we don't know, right? To us and to a lot of guys walking around there, they're like, whatever, man, they're boobs, and you squish them and you keep it moving. We don't get that process, right? So that's understanding that you have to go through this process, this journey, even if it's medical, from 24 through now 35, understanding that this is, and then looking forward, because you have to now plan the rest of your life. I did a Wednesday Wisdom episode this morning talking about what will you live for, and you have to decide at 24, let alone 35 and ongoing, what am I going to continue to live for? And this is a part of that life planning, right? So
that's right.
What goes into the life planning at 24, or even now? Let's just talk now from 35 forward. Like, how do you look at things now with all of that?
So for me, it was, the doctors would always say, think about what you want for your future. When I was in my 20s, do you want to go through the surgery? You're more than welcome to. I had great doctors. My doctor, Dr. Jennifer Reed, I cannot thank her. Give her a shout out. She's the best. She really was allowing me to decide, here's the information. What would you like to do? Just, FYI, obviously, if you have a mastectomy and you have children, you won't be able to breastfeed. And for me, that wasn't most important. For me, it was, if I do have children, I want to be alive for them. Whereas for some people, breastfeeding is really important, and it's totally fine. And that's why you either choose to be, proactive and reactive, or preventative.
Right. So, I mean, okay, so, and I know I'm hitting it from a lot of different angles, because there's just so much content there. You find out you have this gene at 24, you wait till 35 to make a major surgery.
Yeah.
What took you 9 years, or, right? Am I doing the math right? Or
11
years to do this? Why? And because at 35, you're young, so I'm assuming the medical community is like, nah, girl, you don't want to do this. Like, hold on, there's other alternatives. So you're so definitive in this decision, but it literally took 11 years of prayer and figuring this out too, right? Like, so walk us through some of that if that's okay.
So once I sort of got into a good place, so I know that I'm, really, happy to talk about it now, but to be honest, in the beginning, I was not okay. I mean, I really thought my life was coming to an end, or, the inevitable god awful cancer, was in my future. And so getting to this place is amazing. I knew from the beginning that if I ever were to find out that I had cancer, I would immediately choose to go through surgery. I wouldn't try to save
even before finding this out.
No, sorry. So that's when I found out after being diagnosed with BRCA1. I knew in the beginning it would just be, it is what it is, take them. I don't want to save, and I know people who have had breast cancer that wanted to save as much as they could, and that's totally fine as well. For me, it just wasn't my option. I didn't want to do that. And so after a few years of having regular tests and, you know, having to go through MRIs, which for me is I think one of the worst. I don't like MRIs. I'm really claustrophobic and I just hated it. And that, you know, for the hour that you're in the tube, I, you know, would often think, you know, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? You know, what if they find something? And so I think it was about 5 years ago, I decided I am going to have the surgery. I don't know when, but I'm going to. And in speaking with my doctors in Australia, as well as here, they were very supportive and actually were very encouraging to get the surgery done because science is great. And, you know, the surgeons are great. And, you know, they know that that's a surefire way to sort of prevent yourself or to get yourself to the lowest risk possible.
Yeah. So, you're talking to doctors, you're kind of figuring this out. I know that you're doing the private part of it, the journey. And in the middle of all of that, right, because we knew each other right around that time, and then you bounced to another country for a minute. I mean, and it's not like Canada, like you left. What role does counseling play? What role does faith play in this? So, because this is an intimate journey. Like one of the things you and I were joking about was talking about something so intimate and vulnerable on a public platform, not only live, but then to live in infamy and video. But there's a lot of intimacy to this, to your story and to this journey. What role did counseling play? What role did faith play in all of that?
So counseling, did you say, sorry, counseling?
Counseling and faith, therapy.
Yeah. So I was super lucky that when I moved, you know, all the way across the other side of the globe to Australia, they have a great medical system and a lot of support for people like myself. And immediately, you know, upon seeing my regular doctor, they referred me over to the Westmead Hospital Clinic and had me set up with doctors and a whole support system there. I mean, they were holistic. It wasn't just doctors, but it was, you know, counselors and therapists as well. And so they could tell that I was really struggling. I was struggling to make my appointments and to get to the hospital and, you know, mentally just not okay. And being...
What was making you struggle?
That's what I was going to say. Being away from family and not having that sort of social support was a lot harder than I realized. And so they set me up with a counselor there who was fantastic and helped me a lot along the way. And then for me, faith-wise, it was more of just, you know, I have the ability of choice. I feel like God gives us all, you know, the ability of making a choice for ourselves and, you know, bringing people into our lives for a reason. And so having all of these things that I was really blessed to have access to helped me to make a decision. But I knew in my heart that I didn't want to do it in Australia. I wanted to be here around my family and having that support system. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's huge. Okay, and we've got questions coming in, Holly. So I'm going to filter them in through. And you're doing a great job, by the way, for somebody who's a rookie. Great. You know, for everybody watching, and if you're just tuning in, all right, it's 7:20. We're about a quarter of the way, a third of the way through, and we're in Life Change Lounge with Holly Helfant, talking about a real intimate, deep story. I'm going to get raw with some of the thoughts that I have, and then we have some things here. Look, we've got people. Ron sent in the chat and said, look, I know the personal journey because I watched my sister go through this for 20 years. Give me a little bit about it's funny, you get a diagnosis at 24, bounce around the world, and you leave people who are left watching this journey, whether it's on Facebook, Zoom, or whatever, but they're walking through it with you in a sense. And now I recognize you wanted to come back, but they're going through a journey too. Like, what was your thoughts about the other people's journey? And I'm not trying to put your pain and trauma on them, but they're going through some stuff too. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's hard. I know that I can't even imagine being on the other side of it. So, well, and technically I have. I mean, having been so young though, when my aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer, not really sure what was going on. And then when I got older, just before I was, you know, found out about being BRCA1 positive, my youngest aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she's not BRCA positive, but it's really, really hard. And, being the outside person and trying to be as supportive as you can, but also being really kind to yourself too, because it's hard to see someone that you love so much struggle.
Right.
And then also you're so worried about them that you often forget about yourself. So I would absolutely say be really kind to yourself and, reach out to, your own support systems as well to sort of get support, because it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think and it's not necessarily that everybody has to agree with this from a religious standpoint, right? But there's scripture that talks about mourn with those who mourn. And just the concept of that, of just walking through somebody's story with them and being able to feel the emotion that they feel and be okay with that emotion, to say that that's allowable and that we can empathize in a lot of ways, right? And
Absolutely.
so there's the survivor part, there's the person that's in the actual, journey. It's being okay with each other and being able to, on your comfort level, allow access to both sides of the story. Right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's fair. Look, Amanda wrote in and she said, and I know you've said people in your family have had breast cancer and those diagnoses, but are you the only one? Are you the first one, or are you kind of the trendsetter with the BRCA1 part, or were there other family members? And were you the first one to take this step? I don't even want to say the drastic step, the step of the double mastectomy part. Like, how did that go with the family? Trying to explain that when you finally made that decision.
It's such a good question, actually. So
Good job, Amanda.
my understanding, and I could be wrong, I need to actually ask a little bit more with my family, is that my eldest aunt, who unfortunately did have breast cancer and thank God survived, she was the one who really, the first one to find out that she was BRCA1 positive. And so then she told, her siblings, including my father, who needed, to all go out and to get tested and to find out, for your own knowledge. And so my dad is a BRCA1 carrier. And so he said to me, okay, now it's your turn.
Wow.
So that's sort of how it worked back then.
So,
as far as
wait. This is a surprise to me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Holly, but men getting tested for this too. I'm thinking again in my pig brain, like, this is all women and all the women in my family. I'm good because I'm the only boy. But we got to get tested too, whether we got moobs or not. We got to get tested, right?
Absolutely. And men can get breast cancer. When I'm talking about breast cancer and these statistics, it's, with biological women, but men can get breast cancer as well. So you absolutely need to get tested. And I believe with BRCA, it does raise in men a heightened risk of prostate cancer. Wow. So there's a lot of different variants of cancer that, the BRCA1 gene mutation can cause. And so as far as in my family, on my father's side, I am the first one to go through preventative surgery and have the double mastectomy, eventually reconstruction. But not funny or ironic, but on my mom's side of the family, my cousin, my youngest cousin, she actually found out that she's BRCA1 positive and went through, double mastectomy, reconstruction, and total hysterectomy just a few months ago. So she was not messing around. She was super brave, said, look, I've had my children. I'm not, going to have any more. We're just going to do the whole thing, because for her, it was really important to be, there for her children and survive. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So the counselor in me, Holly, keeps going here. Maybe it's the depressed counselor in me. Maybe it's the, the troubled soul that I am. I guess I see so many clients at different levels. You get a diagnosis at 24, you go through this journey, and then you decide to go through the preventative surgery, like you said, but then why not just say, F it? Why not end it? Why not? Where did the depression fit in? Was there any depression? At what point do you say, yo, I'm going to fight? Because it almost seems like to me, Holly, there's this turning point where you in the wise words of Rage Against the Machine, where you take the power back, right? Why not give in? Why not give up?
So in all honesty, I did in the beginning. I was, like I said, in a really horrible place. I would spend, just an awful amount of time by myself crying. I mean, it was really hard. And I don't really know why. I think it's because I didn't really tell anyone. I hadn't told anyone even after the fact. And so I was sort of doing this thing of suffering in silence because I thought I needed to be strong for everyone else, not realizing how bad it was impacting me. And then once I saw my doctors, and I had, my aunt come with me, and I had, friends, really great friends that, were really so supportive. It made a huge difference. So when they say, lean on your support system, it's absolutely the truth. And so
that truth could be almost for anything, right? Not just this, but any sort of, because we've had Joel on here with MS. We have people that are dealing, I mean, I got diabetes, for God's sake. When you have to lean on them, it's being able to say, look, you can't do this alone.
Yeah. And for me too, it was finding the right doctor. I think it's so important that, especially when you're going through something so significant, medically, to find the right doctor. If you meet a doctor and you're not like, feeling it with them or vibing with them, find a new one. You don't have to. For me, it was, I wanted to have a doctor that was a woman. I wanted someone that would actually understand. And so for some people, it's, not as important, but it made a huge difference.
Yeah. Thank you, because, so one of your fears when we were staffing this and talking about this earlier was letting people into the story. Like, again, I live my life out loud. I know that that was a conscious choice, and I do that ongoing. But for some people, especially with something so personal, even telling the details from the surgery to the diagnosis to even the depression and the mental health, that's a lot. I mean, so for, like, I guess my question is now, are you okay, right, walking through this and telling the story, because this is for real? And what are the reservations? What's the hesitation with sharing something so personal? Because you and I come from a different perspective on it. Like, I'm like, look, I'm telling everybody because I can't keep it right? Like, what is the hesitation with telling something so personal?
I'm in such a good place now, but still sharing your story and sort of opening up, you're opening up a little bit of yourself that nobody really gets to see. And it's, it is scary, but in saying that, I'm so happy to share it as well, because it may help somebody else. I had a friend that actually I hadn't spoken to in a really long time said to me, thank you so much for sharing your story. I just sort of dropped a bomb on Facebook and was like, hey, by the way, I'm having surgery. See ya.
I remember reading that post, and I swear to you, it was a WTF moment, because we hadn't talked. I think you just came back from Australia, and so we hadn't really talked. I couldn't like message you and be like, what is this? Like, what is going on? Like, if that was my reaction and I hadn't talked to you that much, I'm sure people close to you were like, what in the actual, right?
I did, okay, in all fairness, I did reach out personally to, my closest, as much as I could.
You didn't call me.
Look, I don't care. I didn't, I forgot.
Come on, man.
But in sharing that, a friend of mine said to me, I'm so happy that you told me, because now I'm going to make my appointment to get my mammogram done and talk to my doctor. And so if my story can help someone, then I'm more than happy to be vulnerable and to share. And if I'm, not feeling like opening up too much, boundaries are always important.
Yeah, like Marianne Williamson has a poem, called Our Deepest Fear, and I use it a lot in therapy. I use it a lot in references. It's in Coach Carter, Keela and the Bee, and they use parts of it. But one of the greatest lines in there is, your playing small does not serve the world. And I know that's talking about some of our fears and reservations, regardless of what it is, good or bad. You're playing small on a subject matter like this. Do you know how excited, and you do know, because I've been telling you, like, how excited I was to be able to have the opportunity to talk to you about this at this age, at this stage of life, knowing that your unwillingness to play small will serve somebody. It doesn't help anybody stay quiet,
That's I mean, that's right. And it didn't help myself either. It doesn't help other people, and it doesn't help yourself. So,
So I am going somewhere, I promise, because I know part of your concern was how do we know where we're going and what's going to happen? You wanted a script. There was no script. This is Life Change Lounge, Holly. We don't have scripts in here. We just roll with the voices in my head. So I want y'all to keep the questions coming for Holly. Keep the questions about not just her journey and her decisions, but just also being able to share. I think something that's cool is, like, as I'm watching Ron give feedback here, even on the chat, is that you give an opportunity for people to share their story because they talk to you and say thank you, but they also get to have a platform like this where they share and sort of cleanse some of their own story.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the help that you didn't even see that you were giving. Question for you. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, but then I'm going to come back to that. So trust me, I know where I'm going. Had the double mastectomy, have the healing time. I reached out to you and asked you, hey, would you want to do this? Flat out question, why reconstruction? what's the point of, if the life change moment was
Yeah.
the diagnosis and not the procedure, why reconstruct? You're a beautiful woman, you're 35, boobs don't mean a thing, they mean what you want them to mean, it's not about the boobs, it's not about this and that, and yet you're having reconstruction, and so many women do. What's the need for reconstruction if you're such a good place?
It was one of my first questions that I asked my doctor when I was sort of discussing, you know, having the double mastectomy years ago. And one of my first questions was, will I be left with nothing? Because I don't want that. I feel like I knew in my heart that I wouldn't feel whole. You know, you have the huge surgery and you come out of it, you know, in such a different place in your life. But I knew in my heart that I wouldn't feel whole or satisfied, you know, so I asked, you know, could I have reconstruction? And they were already on top of it. I mean, I don't know what the percentage of women that have reconstruction is, but, you know, I know it's much higher and they're much more advanced in their options. And so I wanted to have it done. And so at the moment, I'm waiting to have my reconstruction surgery. And it hopefully will be soon.
Is there, if it's this need, Holly, to feel whole, sort of, you know, for whatever, and again, this is, let me be real clear, and I think you'll agree, this is a personal journey. You have to make that decision for yourself. This is not a requirement to get reconstruction. It's not a requirement to have the procedure. It's not a requirement. You have to make the decisions that are healthiest for you based on your mindset and where you see. But in this in-between space, if the reconstruction means wholeness, now you're in this in-between space, and they delayed your story. Sorry to put this out, right? But they pushed it back a little bit. Life happens. Does that mean that in this space in between that you're not feeling whole? Where are you in this headspace in between? Because you had the procedure, right? You got the diagnosis, have the procedure, and now you're waiting. So does that mean you're effed up right now?
No, not at all. So at the moment, after the surgery, when you're having reconstruction, or sorry, when you have the double mastectomy and you choose reconstruction, generally, and with my doctor, you have tissue expanders that are then put in because they take so much from you that, you know, it's necessary to have that and for your body to sort of heal and to stretch the skin enough, you know, to where you want to be. So at the moment, I'm super uncomfortable. You know, it's not aesthetics for me. It's just being physically really uncomfortable in the space because it's not great. I mean, you don't just recover from surgery. You have very hard pieces of plastic put into your body, and I'm just ready to have them out. But I know that I feel very confident in my decision and getting the reconstruction done.
You know, this is the part, I think it's good a moment to pause and talk a little bit about, maybe it's the unintentional insensitivity, maybe it's some of the joking. A lot of people are going to look at this and watch yours and mine banter back and forth and look, this is what we do. But they're going to say there's no space for humor in this. There's no space for that. But there's also a fine line that's crossed because there's the insensitivity again. I'm picking on men. Sorry, men, come at me later. Because we don't think like that. We think hey, you can go bigger. Now you finally got something better. You get to choose. What do you mean hard plastic? Right? Women get implants all the time, right? Embrace the change, right? There's a lot of this that borders on insensitivity and insulting almost, but some of it too that is humorous and you got to embrace. How do you differentiate? How do we know the difference as kind of the innocent bystanders are not so innocent?
Yeah, I think I think majority of people really do mean well. And oftentimes it's sort of a slip of the tongue when they make comments like that, but it is super insensitive. I know that you and I have joked around a lot about it. And for me, I've really led through this journey with a lot of like humor and laughter. And I was sort of joking like, oh, just take them, it's fine, I'll just get new ones. But in reality, it's terrifying and it's a huge surgery and it's not fun. And there's a lot of, yucky stuff going on after healing and not being able to care for yourself and having, my mother take care of me at 35 years old is not the most fun or flattering thing to go through. But I think, if people don't really know what it's like to go through that, just being really thoughtful and sensitive with the comments that, they sort of make is so much more helpful because we're going through so much, regardless of finding humor in it. It's very scary.
It's literally, Holly, it's erring on the side of caution, but it's also checking your own insecurities and your own struggles in the conversations that you're having. If it's not that you can't have questions or insecurities, or, kind of in this thing. But I think again, one thing that jumps out about this interview is that you got to be open about that. Like, look, I don't know what to say, and that's okay to say. I have no.
It's totally okay.
I had a wild moment to say, yo, I want to talk to Holly about this. And it wasn't marketing. It wasn't like numbers. It was like, this is a real life change because you're a bad chick. But then after that, I don't really know what to say, And so
and
I
it's
think
totally okay.
Yeah.
I think it's so, kind to say, I want to be there for you, or I'd love to talk to you, but I don't know what to say. And allowing the person to sort of lead you through their journey is sort of the best thing to do. And for people like me, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anyone. And so it's okay to not know.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm so thankful that we can have that part of this discussion, because I think that there's people that are going to share this later. There's people that don't, they don't have the ADHD brain that I got that moves so fast. They're going to have to process it, figure out who they need to share this with. Maybe they're going through their own journey with this, and they have to share it with their intimate partner, their family. And I'm so thankful that you can give that piece of advice. I know that you wanted to help people telling your story. I think that hopefully one of the takeaways for you is that you see you're helping more than you ever even realized. In the chat, Ron said, man, I'm so proud of you. He's like, I admire your strength. I mean, literally, I read it and I was like, ooh, I'm getting teary-eyed. Like, this is bad, right? We got Nicholas that said, prayers and positive vibes, you're heading your way. Like, they don't know. I don't know if they know. Right? And that's the sentiment that is, look, I'm just here. We're riding with you. I think that's cool, right?
Amazing.
What does that feel like?
It's amazing to me. And it's so like unexpected. And it's so like, I never sort of imagined, having people that I don't even know, like actually genuinely caring about, what I'm going through, or, being so understanding. And it's just so nice.
So let me ask you this. This is a question. Kelly wrote this one in. Shout out, Kelly. Coming from a family with a long history of breast cancer, I'm terrified of being tested. Right. And there's a lot of women that have told you told me even one story where you said, look, because of you, I'm going to start a self-examination and testing. Just the journey that is getting tested, going through, what is the mammogram, going through all those sort of things. Like, again, I make jokes about those things because I don't know, but there's a fear of getting tested. There's a fear of learning. I mean, that part of it, it's not necessarily just Kelly's, but a fear of finding out truth and then having to wrangle the truth. You were 24 finding out certain truths. For women, ignorance is bliss, and they don't want to find out. What do you do? Well, how does Holly, because I know there's many ways, how does Holly encourage women like Kelly, women that are afraid to get tested or find out answers or take control like you did? What do you say to them?
Honestly, I understand. I can completely empathize with, Kelly on that sort of aspect. I did the same thing. So it's not me just going in and getting tested and everything, I'm just so, ready. I actually made the appointment and canceled because I was too scared to go to the appointment. I was too scared to find out. I didn't want to know. No, for the BRCA test.
Gotcha, because that's a separate test.
Yeah. So I completely understand the aspect of not wanting to go and get tested for the gene mutation or, even the mammograms itself. It's terrifying. And I can't convince you.
I'm sorry. Were mammograms, I know they weren't fun, but were they, I don't know when you're supposed to start them because, again, I don't do this. Were they terrifying leading up to? I know they're not fun, but were they terrifying before knowing that you were looking for something, or more terrifying now, right? You see what I'm saying? Because Kelly's she has a history of breast cancer in the family. A lot of women do. So maybe the mammograms are terrifying because of the history, or are they terrifying because of just the procedures? Like,
I don't think it's necessarily the procedure. And maybe she can correct me. I think that it's finding out later that they found something. And that is so scary, and not being in the mental place to go into that appointment and finding out. And more than likely, there won't be anything, but having to face the fact of they could potentially find something. It could be life-changing. It could, completely spiral into, all the what ifs. So I can completely understand. What I would say is having control of your personal health is so gratifying and strengthening to you. Being able to take control for me was, I'm not a super controlling person, but I like to be in control.
Right.
So I
But
wanted to be
control
in
also means,
control.
control is also not just kind of getting tested, right? We encourage the regular testing. We encourage the medical procedures of being in control and of taking that power of owning that. How do you control the things, you're 35, you
Yeah.
drink, smoke, do whatever, right? I don't know what you do. We don't think like, I got you like wilding out. Holly's crazy. But being controlled could be from what you eat, what you do, what your lifestyle is, and those sort of things too. Like, how do you differentiate what is quote unquote control and what's healthy and what's not? How do you not judge for that?
For me, control was knowledge. I wanted as much knowledge as possible. I felt like being able to then make health decisions was empowering. I didn't feel it as being, a crutch or being, disabled in any sort of way. I felt like I'm empowered to have that information and then I can make an informative decision of what I want to do. But what I would say is, it's easy for me to say, no, you should just go get tested. But I would say, as advice, reach out to someone that you're really close to and see if they can go with you. For me, that was so helpful, having somebody.
For the major procedure, is that necessary? Again, me thinking out loud, is that necessary for things like the mammogram? Or is that I guess maybe the answer to that is wherever you feel the anxiety and fear rest coming in, get the supports at whatever the stage is, right?
That's right.
Because even with, like, I don't know how many people carry the BRCA1 or not, but going and getting that procedure, then the waiting, right? And then the having, even if it's I don't know how long it takes, 7 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 days for results. If you have anxiety in that procedure, then bring somebody. It's okay to lose somebody.
Absolutely. And have them meet you mentally where you are, because this is your journey. This is not their journey. This is not your doctor's journey. This is yours. So having, somebody that can be super empathetic to what you're going through is so important.
And Kelly wrote back, she said her doctor wanted her to have the BRCA test, but she's terrified. Her words were, my fear is not if you get it, cancer, not if you get cancer, but due to my family history, right? Because there's all these sort of underlying factors, right? In therapy, we look at the family history and the family diagnosis, family trends. It's almost not like an if, but when, right? And a lot of this, I'm diabetic. I've been diabetic 30 some years. My daughter was going to get it. One of my kids was going to get it. It was going to come out at some point. And it's like the if, but when. And I could remember, Holly, my oldest getting diagnosed, and it was heartbreaking. Not because it was an if, but when, like, yo, it's finally here. That shit finally happened. It's how do you gear up for knowing there's things in your family? You talked about your family history. You knew some negative information was going to come. And yet you still have to walk through that. You have to empower yourself to get the answers, the facts, the knowledge. Do people help in that? Again, people, faith. I mean, what do you encourage to try to walk through this tunnel that's going to be effed up?
Yeah. For me, it was my family really, being so strong behind me, and with me along the whole way. And my dad and my aunt, who were like, you absolutely have to get the test done. It's just for your own personal knowledge. It changes nothing because you either have it or you don't have it. But again, it's so easy for me to say that, and being in such a good place, I can completely, understand where she's coming from, because at one point I was the same. But not knowing or knowing doesn't change whether you have it or you don't.
Doesn't change the results. It's there regardless, right?
And it's, and in saying that, I have cousins who are tested, and my other aunt as well, who don't have the gene. So, we were a little bit shocked, to be honest. We were like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I know y'all had something wrong with you. I'm the normal one. You're not, right?
Yeah. So it was just, it was a shock, but it's, again, when you're ready, I would absolutely encourage anyone to get it done. And there's also really great other avenues that you can go through as well. From my understanding, you can, and this is not a plug, obviously, I wish it was, 23andMe, the one that you can send off for your family genetics. They
might be
actually test for
listening,
the
Holly.
gene.
They might pick you up as a sponsor, girl. You get paid. But
and that's great for people who may not have access to insurance either. So, it's making it more accessible to the wider public.
So here's So good, so good. Look, we got like 15 minutes or so left, because we're just warming up. Life Change Lounge, Holly Helfant, she's doing a great job. You feel all right? You need a break?
I'm feeling good. No, I'm good.
All right, you rolling. Here's a hard one. I'm gonna hit you with a hard punch, because this Amanda wrote this one in. Is being a carrier of the gene influence your decision to have or not have children? And you hit me with this truth, like, yo, I've been processing it earlier. The trickle down sort of results, and maybe this was my lack of understanding when we talked earlier, but the trickle down results from a reproductive standpoint. Like, so can you talk about some of that?
Absolutely. I've been actually much more open about this recently too. So I didn't know until a few years ago that, through being BRCA, either 1 or 2 positive, there are options of, choosing to either, conceive naturally however you want to, and, taking chances and knowing in the future they may be, a vaccine or a pill or, something that could, change your life in regards to BRCA, or you can choose to go through IVF. And they will actually test, I don't know, the eggs and sperm and embryo to make sure that it's not, a BRCA 1 or 2 carrier. And then you can do it that way.
Wow.
For me, I don't know. I don't know if I will have biological children. I don't know if I will adopt. It's both something that I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, but it was a concern of passing it on to my child.
And the concern too that you should, knowing, again, being young, like this, you're young because you're just younger than me. I'm just mad at you. You get to die all your grades. I didn't. You have to wrestle with, it's not a guarantee, but you wrestle with, and a lot of women have had to deal with early hysterectomies and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
How much do you wrestle with it if it's not fact, right? It's not guaranteed, right? Like, just like they tell me I'm gonna need dialysis and I'm gonna die, or I'm gonna lose my left pinky toe. That's not guaranteed being diabetic. It's not guaranteed with this diagnosis, but it is something that crosses our minds. We're like, oh, what if? And so knowing that may be in the cards, and when we don't know, how do you wrestle with that?
I do, and it's such a good question to ask, actually. It was something that my doctor in Australia, had a sat down and had a very frank conversation with me and said, look, we will come up with a plan together. I don't want to frighten you. I mean, not these exact words, but, we need to make a decision of what you're going to do for future as far as, your risk of ovarian cancer, because that's, I've got a 46% chance of developing ovarian cancer in my lifetime. And to me, that's too high. And with ovarian cancer, there's not a lot of testing that goes into it. So it's often caught after it develops.
I'm thinking of a hard, weird question. Follow me on this, or you don't have to. You can be like, yo, I ain't answering that. You did preventative surgery for your breast. Why not do preventative surgery for the rest of your female reproductive organs? And it's just something, I don't know, like, that's a hard question, and that's a hard thing to figure out so young and so in this stage, right?
So the plan is by 40, no later, I will have, they initially said ovary removal, but there's a lot more research that's going into BRCA carriers that apparently the cancer actually starts more so in the fallopian tubes and then moves into the ovaries. So the safest way to sort of ensure is to do a total hysterectomy, which I will eventually do. It is absolutely not something that I'm ready for right now, because that is definitively will change your life forever. So you can't put it back. There's no reconstruction. So that's something that I will eventually do, but I'm not doing right now. So I will go in for my regular testing and seeing my specialist.
Nor do you need to process right now.
Exactly.
You set out some goals for yourself and some sort of timeline. That's about as much as I'm needing to do right now, because I can't wrestle with the rest of it. It's overwhelming.
Absolutely. It is. And that's exactly what the doctors will say. This is for your information. My doctors were like, you don't have to do anything with it. I just want you to know, because it's not something that you want to have to make a decision on in a split moment if you don't have to.
Wow. damn, girl, because I'm walking through it, and listen, we have a genuine friendship. We started with troubled kids in detention, for God's sake, right? We were sharing stories back and forth, and now we're talking about reproduction and your journey that isn't so intimate. Like, that's a lot. And so the caregivers in a lot of us wants to reach out, and you're getting that, the support, the strength that you're providing, and it's just a lot. I mean, it's okay to say it's a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot. It's not something that most 35-year-olds, sort of go through. It's a lot for what most women don't go through, or most men don't go through. So it's heavy.
So, okay, I'm gonna move you towards this, because it's funny to me, almost too heavy, now funny, because I'm messed up like that. Did you do all this? Did you do this interview? Did you make these decisions because your goal was to be an advocate and a champion and the outspoken, right? Because you've moved into this space now, Holly, that is a spokeswoman, an advocate, and a model for ways to take care of yourself, whether you chose to or not. Did you choose that and do that intentionally? Like, was that the goal? Okay, so I'm gonna speak out so that I can, right? Or
oh my God, I would never do the surgery to be an advocate or a champion or anything. I mean, I feel far from it. I just feel like this is just something that I've had to choose to sort of go through, and becoming sort of someone to talk to or to talk about it was just the not aftermath, but sort of an afterthought. I'm more than happy to speak to people and help people in their journey, but it definitely, I don't even like people to put me in the spotlight. So
well, so here's the thing, right? Because many of us, for our own stories, our own journey, we go through literally debilitating trauma, debilitating change, impacts and things, and we wonder at the time that we're going through it, Holly, why am I going through this? What is this going to do? What's the point of this? Some people choose to take that pain and turn it into a sort of an advocacy role and really speak out. And some people, it crushes them. Some people, you have the different responses. You, again, and it's not just picking on your age, but just any woman that faces something like this has the choice of being able to use it, to be crushed, or to avoid it. Like, what, I mean, you're choosing to speak out. But I know, is it a constant, almost daily wrestle to avoid or be crushed? Or is it like, this is where I'm at, so now I'm going all in?
No,
Like,
I think
advocate.
it's an opportunity. You asked me to be, on here, and I'm more than happy to do so. And, it's making me feel like super empowered in my decision and sort of where I am in my life. But in saying that, if people go through the same thing that I'm going through and they choose not to, it doesn't make them any less empowered than, where I am. I'm just in a really good place in my life, and I feel really blessed to be able to share my story.
Yeah. I think that and it's my hope, right? It's my hope for Life Change Lounge. It's my hope for conversations like this, that I can encourage those sort of things, right? Again, Marianne Williamson, like, our playing small, our avoidance of these hard subjects, like, you're not my wife. You don't owe me anything. You don't have to share this story with me or with anybody. But it's my hope that if we do that, we take the risk, and the risk pays off, that we encourage, or we ignite this sort of life in people to do what they can to fight, to do what they can to be healthier, to get answers, to get facts, to be knowledgeable. I mean, that's why I wanted you on here. I didn't know if this was going to fold. I didn't know if you were going to get stage fright and be like, you could have, but you choose to take the step, and it's scary.
Yeah.
Right?
It is. It's super scary, but and I'm sure that you can completely understand, coming from a social work background. We work with amazing people who need help, or super vulnerable people in communities, and we're trying to empower them, but we often don't empower ourselves. We often don't take care of ourselves. So I sort of had to do a Uno reverse and sort of like
nice.
What would I tell my clients to do? And so it was take care of yourself, and
I mean, I'll tell you, even just from my own journey of different painful moments, I could remember sitting with clients and I'm like, man, you believe this shit? Like, it was a real moment of like, how are you believing this? Because there was a season there where I didn't buy, I have to do this for myself too. I have to be empowered, or I have to set the tone or the example. There was man, this is all horse shit. And then you have to find a way to own that and really see that it's not horse shit. It's not bull. I need to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's the funny part that you don't know, encouraging wise. Susan, shout out Susan. that's my homegirl. You need to know. Susan says, thank you for opening up and sharing your story and what you've been through. It helps to ease some of the fears women have. Being a breast cancer survivor of 8 years, I think, and 8.5 years, excuse me, I would want my 2 daughters to get the test. I think it's better to be in the know. Because of early detection, I'm here today. Susan clearly is older than you. Susan's got 2 daughters. Susan's got, right, she's been on this journey. You inspire not just young girls, you inspire not even women just your age, but also knowing you. What's cool about it, Holly, is that you got this impact on even older generations that have the wisdom enough to look back and be inspired by somebody young like you.
I'm so grateful for like people like Susan, who, as well as my aunt Sheila, I mean, they paved the way for people like me. And I'm so incredibly internally grateful to them, because without them, we also wouldn't be here. And so I'm so thankful that they're, survivors and they kicked cancer's ass, because it's, that's all we can ask for.
Absolutely. So we're coming up to the end of the hour. You've done great. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
It does.
You want to keep going? Because we can do this in another hour. So
I'm not that interesting.
Oh, girl, we could keep it rolling. I want you to know, all right, so Life Change Lounge, wrapping up. I want the questions to keep coming, y'all. I want the questions and comments. We're going to have this posted on our Facebook. We're going to have this posted on YouTube. Follow all the socials. Holly's going to have this streaming on all her platforms, because the 23andMe sort of people are going to grab this and she's going to be sponsored, and then we're all going to get rich. I know, it's a dream. Holly, you've been amazing. Question. This is the other unscripted, and then we'll move into sort of a shout out phase. It's because I want you to shout out. You've had some amazing people in your life. I love to think that I'm at the top of the list, but that's just selfish. But it's worth shouting out, because you've been on a hard journey, but an amazing journey. So I want you to shout them out. But here's the thing. Here's the question. To me, life change means what, right? If you had to define life change, right? And this is what I tell folks, what I tell my clients, what I tell people I interact with, is this sort of blanket definition that we try to fit this huge definition to this little box of a statement. But to Holly Helfant, life change means what?
For me, life change was re-empowering myself. So it wasn't the BRCA diagnosis. It wasn't the surgery. It was having the ability to take all of my fear and all of the unknown and turn that into, I actually am in such a great place that I have access to these, sort of options. I have a great family, great friends, huge support system. And it then, took all of it, shook it up, re-empowered myself, and my life completely changed. And then I was able to make those huge, hard decisions.
Yeah. Life change means re-empowerment. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. That's a cool definition. We've had a few guests on here. They've all done well. That was pretty good, though. Yeah, I mean, you're competing for that top spot. It's re-empowerment. It is. It's life change. Right? People will sometimes they look at, why do I need to change my life? They'll look at the things that impact their life that they never asked for from a life change moment. If we never asked for these life change moments, you didn't ask for this diagnosis, you didn't ask for this journey, but you took it by the balls and you said, I'm going to take it and make it re-empower me.
Yeah.
So that's huge. And I think that you model that perfectly, and just being able to speak that into other people.
Yeah. And it doesn't happen overnight. It does not happen overnight. So I would never, absolutely.
And you're still on it. You're still going.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I would encourage anyone,
go for it. Oh, sorry, go ahead. You encourage and shout out. Go do both.
I would just encourage anyone that, your journey is so unique. And if you're not in a great place right now, don't think that you should be or that you have to be. It's a slow process. So
it's a journey. I mean, it's not a sprint. This is your life. And you spoke earlier, Holly, I chose not to end my life. I chose not to feed the depression. I'm going to live. And so now that I'm going to live, let's go. Who are the people that get the props? And I know we're going to leave people out, like this is the Oscars for you, right? Like you want to give a shout out to certain people, but I think that some people deserve to be acknowledged in knowing that they played a huge impact in this journey, in this re-empowerment that you've been on. Who do you shout out on this?
Oh, definitely my family. I mean, like first and foremost, my family, obviously my parents, my mom, my dad, my stepmom, my stepdad. There was a lot of concerns and a lot of fears, but they were so incredibly supportive. My aunts, you know, my Aunt Sheila and Aunt Joni and Aunt Becky, they're just like the three like most strong, amazing women that I have in my life.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, so important. And
Yeah.
my sisters too, they were
Yeah.
worried but supportive. And, you know, it's just natural for family to feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not that the people that you don't name don't earn the props.
Absolutely.
Right.
I have a list. I mean, my friends, my best friends, you know, Lauren and Trina and everyone that, you know, it's just, it's so great to have people that, you know, they're worried, but they're there to support you and they're to be there along with you on the journey.
I mean, that's cool because that list gets to keep growing. As people continue to ride with you, that list keeps growing of the gratitude and the wow, you played an important part of this journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. That is so cool. Holly, you've been great. You've been
Thank
great.
you.
You know, we've joked at Life Change Institute. We've joked about having guests come back. You know, kind of the where are they now stories, right? We're not quite big enough yet, but we're gonna do that. You know, we're gonna joke about, and we're gonna talk about it because I think that this is an exciting moment to see the life change, re-empowerment, and journey. And it's gonna be amazing to see what's in store for you in the future. I can't wait. And I know that the people that have known you and walked with you can't wait, let alone the people that you don't even know that you're inspiring.
Yeah.
That's gonna be cool, man. Thank you. From my heart
Thank
to you.
you.
Yeah, thank you. 802, you made it through.
We did it.
You did. I mean, that's all you, man. I can do this in my sleep. You did well. And you did it looking so good being sick. So you didn't even cough once.
Little fever that gave me a nice color in my face.
So was it the fever that made you sweat or was it the questions, you know?
Both.
There you go. This has been Life Change Lounge with Holly Helfant. I'm Salo Ortiz, and we will have another interview in a couple of months. But right now we just stand with Holly to say, please get tested. Don't avoid the test. Don't avoid the answers. Take the power back on your life and say, F cancer, right? But also F ignorance. Like, we're going to do this and we're going to learn. If you guys got questions, drop them in the chats, put them on our Facebook, put them on our socials, find us. We're going to answer them. I got access to Holly. I promise I'll send her the message at 3 a.m. and say, yo, I got a question for you. She's like, leave me alone. But I know that I can speak for her when I say she doesn't mind. She's here to encourage and empower as she continues to get empowered. So Holly, you've done great. Life Change Lounge and our statement, we're out. So thank you. Bye, Holly.
Thank you.